Looking to switch your phone service? Check out Boost Infinite Wireless. Its new technology switches between its own network and the other top 2 networks to find the best quality calls and data for you anywhere, anytime. And you can get a low-priced, unlimited wireless plan that gives you a new iPhone every year. So switch today. Call 855-55-BOOST. That's 1-855-55-BOOST. Visit boostinfinite.com. That's boostinfinite.com. Or go to amazon.com and search for Boost iPhone 15. See boostinfinite.com for terms and conditions.
Following last year's amazing turnout, the Black Effect Podcast Network and Nissan are giving 50 HBCU STEAM scholars the opportunity to have an all-expenses-paid trip to Nissan's second Thrill of Possibility Summit. This is a remarkable opportunity to be mentored by auto, tech, and podcasting's brightest minds. NCA&T's Marcus Scott Jr., who attended the first summit, had this to say: "A life-changing, impactful experience that I've never had in my life." Enter now to be a part of this incredible weekend. For more information, visit blackeffect.com/Nissan.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins.
Yo, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode in which I talk about people making loud noises, and whether that is like actually creating the loud noises, documenting the loud noises and putting them out on record, or whether it is, the behind the scenes stuff of loud noises, taking pictures of loud noises. You get it, right? I thought it was fun to kind of carry on that theme. Anyways, I have a great discussion this week with Lis Di Angelo. They are from the band Filth Is Eternal, which honestly kind of flew under my radar. Like, I knew they put out a record on Silent Panic, if I'm not mistaken, or Quiet Panic, one of those. I probably should know that, but the first full length came out, I don't know, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And then, they were just kind of a band that existed on the periphery, but then they signed with Monarch Heavy, and they put out a record called Find Out. And I love this record. I think it's really, really good. It's a wide representation of like what, aggressive music can be in the year of our Lord 2023, where it's got a little, grunge thrown into it. It's got a little melody. It's got definitely a lot of core, a lot of aggression, as it were. So yeah, I had to talk to Lis because, like I said, they are in the band and they are making loud noises in the band. And that is exactly why I wanted to have them on the show. Let's talk about ways that you can support this very podcast, because let's be honest, it takes very little time for you to support your favorite podcast. And you can do that by, of course, emailing the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Love to hear feedback, any and all things from you, the listener. Just because, podcasting, it's a little bit of an isolating medium. So when you can kind of bring those threads together, it's always great. You can also leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast page. It takes you 30 seconds, maybe 45 if you're feeling generous. And then if you wanted to toss not a ranking, how about a review? No, not even a review. A star rating. There we go. How about that? On the Spotify page. If you listen to it on there, those are all helpful ways. And you can also follow along with this particular podcast on YouTube. I will put a link in the show notes where you can, dip right in, share it around as you see fit, because some people love to listen to podcasts on YouTube, and that's totally fine. That's why I put them there. I want this thing to reach as many people as possible that are interested, obviously. I'm not trying to make this into, like my full-time job. I got that already, okay? Anyways, let's just go ahead and just peel the wrapper off of this conversation with Lis. They actually just finished a run over the UK. I saw that went swimmingly well for them. And check out their record, Find Out. Like I said, it's on Monarch Heavy. Came out in September. It's really, really, really good. I urge you to listen to it. So let's talk to Lis from Filth Is Eternal. your band has always kind of missed me, for lack of a better term, where it's like I was familiar with the name, familiar with what you were doing, but tell me if this kind of thought process resonates, where it's one of those aspects where it's like, you might not listen to a band for a million different reasons, not because you're like, oh, I actively dislike them, so I'm going to avoid them. But it's almost that idea of like, oh, I want to see if they're, kind of like out there and touring and playing shows before, and maybe this is me just being too emotionally precious about music, but like the idea of like, I want to make sure before I invest myself into them that they're going to be like out there and doing it, so to speak. Not to say that like you have to be a full-time band in order for me to enjoy that, but that connection that you can make with an artist and their music. And I think that's why I might not have checked it out. But once I started to see your name out there even more from, obviously putting out records and touring, that's where I felt like I had an entry point to you and your music. Does that, when you personally are checking out bands and stuff like that, does anything of what I say kind of resonate with you on that side of things?
Absolutely. And I think by default, because I was a part of a all ages space for a long time, part of a collective of people that were running a space, and we had bands come in and out. It's really kind of the active ones that sort of get on your radar, and whether you're hosting them or whether someone else, in the house is hosting, that's when I think they really it becomes real, and then you lean in. So that resonates a lot, actually. In fact, just on the opposite side, being in a band that, we kind of had some starts and stops. I actually completely understand from that perspective too. And one of the biggest changes that I think we're trying to make, for the remainder of this year and then next year, is really leaning into getting out there more. And I just understand the importance of it, because you can have, your music and maybe that's accessible, but there's nothing, to me, I just really love connecting with a band and connecting with people in person. That's where all the community seems to be built. And I not to appreciate all the support that comes online, because that was kind of a hot topic on some of the forums for a while. But that there's tons of support that comes in an online form. But I do understand what you mean about being able to connect in person, 100%.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit the nail on the head in regards to the idea of touring and just getting in front of people and playing shows where it feels, especially for people like you and I who are, very involved and connected to the scene and are not just kind of like, oh, this is just entertainment and a cool thing to do on the weekends. It really does kind of place that level of importance where it's like, oh yeah, like this band is doing it. And, I feel like I can ride along with them because they're putting, just as much, if not obviously more effort as opposed to like me, the listener, where it's just like, oh yeah, like now I can follow along because I know that they're going to be putting out more music, or I have the opportunity to see them and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. It's interesting too, because I think it applies to, sometimes I'll see like a festival like flash in front of me, and then you actually get, if you actually get to go participate in it, it just becomes more real, and you realize, oh, these festivals are people. There's all these people behind this that are making this happen, and then before you know it, you're all family. So like I just really love getting out there, and again, from this angle, there were a lot of start and stops, and there were some gaps in our touring cycles over the last few years, and not just because of lockdown, but even before that, for a year and a half. So it's just really great to kind of be gearing up and seeing some of these things manifest. Some of the conversations we're having about what next year is going to look like, and just I'm getting really excited, because being amongst people and being with people is everything for me, and I know other members of the band.
Sure, no, it's exciting. Kind of putting the focus on you as a person, were you actually born and raised in the Pacific Northwest? I couldn't track that.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. No, I was born and raised in East Bay, born in Fremont, California, and spent quite a bit of time moving around, but mostly around California. My parents were in a band together. And so like our earliest years, we just moved a lot. And I lived in Weed, California at one point.
Of course, the famous Weed. Yes, right.
Famous Weed. I lived there for a few years, so I got to be a mountain kid. And that was, really interesting. But yeah, just moving around a lot. And I think about that sometimes, how in some ways moving a lot. And when we lived up in Weed, my dad actually still worked in the East Bay, and he would have to commute. Like, I don't even know how long that is as far as hours.
Yeah, that's like it feels like that would be like a 2-hour drive or something.
Yeah, I think even like longer. It was like really bonkers, but he used to do that commute, and I used to like drive with him on those long drives. And I just feel like in a way that sort of set me up for wanting to always be in a vehicle and always be like moving and traveling. So, but yeah, born in East Bay ultimately.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Free. And I find that whole, I'm in Southern California, like the Orange County area. And I know like you probably experience the same thing where it's like you play all of these random shows in and around California, and you have such a different experience where it's like, anybody that has never lived in California just kind of thinks of like, oh yeah, there's San Francisco, and then there's like, LA and Orange County or whatever. And then you're just like, yeah, but you've never been to Fremont. Like that's a whole different, like Central California is like a whole different. And I know you would probably take, umbrage with me calling Fremont Central California, but like that idea. Yeah. It's like a whole different world that is like very difficult to explain. It's like, no, there's like farms and like desert. It's like a whole thing.
No, and you touch on an interesting point. I think sometimes like, I kind of wish I would have started, my musical endeavors on the East Coast, because like when you travel, when you tour like West Coast, it's awesome. But, just speaking to California size, look how big it is. That's like, how many states could fit in California? And I just think about, I don't know why that's been on my mind lately. Just when I go to the East Coast, you're like drives 2 hours and then you're in another major city. So I love West Coast. I'm not saying anything negative. It's just been on my mind lately. I'm like, how different of an experience would it be to have started this over there, anywhere on the East Coast versus where we're at right now. But
totally. Yeah. And especially it's so eye-opening when you do play shows in the Northeast, and it's just like, wait, so I can like stay in Jersey and play shows and like fit, like I can like go back to home base and like play like 5 shows in the area, but stay in the same place with a friend or whatever. And it's like, that just obvious to your point, that doesn't really exist in yes, I guess you could theoretically do that in Southern California and play LA and San Diego or whatever, but it's so much more centralized to your point on the East Coast.
Right. Yeah. And it's just interesting. It definitely, you get a lot of grit that way, like especially like Southwest touring, all West Coast, Southwest, like any drives through Texas, like those, it definitely gets you tough and ready for, I don't know, you appreciate the 2-hour drives after doing a lot of West Coast and Southwest touring for sure.
Totally. Yeah. I like that. Just the idea of being like, all right, well, we got another 8-hour drive, and it's just like, well, yep, that's what we do. And then once you feel like you've broken through the Midwest or Southwest or South or whatever, and you're just like, oh, so like, this is what the life should feel like. 2 to 3 hour drives every night.
I'm like, this is amazing.
Totally. So as you were moving around and kind of, I assume, being thrown into different like schooling situations and having to make new groups of friends and, find your identity in a lot of different places, was that, was that difficult, or was that relatively, I don't want to say easy because moving is never easy, but just being able to kind of be like a chameleon in certain instances?
Well, yeah, that's like kind of an interesting word, because I think back on that, you always have you, but then when you do move, you can kind of, I almost like you change by default because the people you're hanging out with are going to be slightly different. So you get a lot of exposure to different types of people who do all different types of things. And I think I've always I've kind of enjoyed it more than I've loathed it. Let me put it that way. And a lot of exposure to like different types of music, and between my family being, kind of a musical family and that exposure, and then friends listening to different things, I know at the end of it, it's an amalgam of all these different genres and sounds and exposures. It's great. I think it's been more of a blessing than a curse. I hope.
Sure. And that idea too, that you, not like you really have the wherewithal when you're in like elementary school, but maybe when you get into junior high or high school, the idea that you can, reinvent yourself, where it's like, okay, I'm going to new school. Like, I'll be the, sports person, or like, I'm going to be the book, whatever, just these archetypes that you like feel like you have to fall into. You can reinvent yourself in ways where it's like, no one knows me. I can just be a new person.
Yeah. It's, and I think through all of it, I've always been drawn to music. I've been drawn to art, but I did try, I tried different things. I tried to be an athlete. I was terrible. I was, all different types too. Like I tried it all, every single type of thing you could possibly do. I was all of it.
I love that. You're just like, listen, I've really run the gamut. Like I've tried the, sports ball stuff. I've tried like running stuff, like all of this, and I can't do any of it.
Yeah. Really embarrassing memories of me just getting like hit in the face with like a softball, 'cause I just couldn't even like catch it. But yeah, it was really cool in retrospect. And I think in the moment, there are times that were tough. And there were a lot of moments that were really tough when we lived in Weed, and, the age that we were when we were there, and dad was gone a lot of the time. That was tricky, and mom was trying to figure stuff out. And, I guess everything reflecting back always felt kind of bittersweet. There's good things, and then there were tough things.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. And was it, did you have any siblings or anything like that? Or was it just you and the parents?
Younger brother, younger sister. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, you're the one that was forging the path and getting in the most trouble because you were the oldest.
I wish I was getting into trouble. No, straight up. I was not cool enough to be getting in trouble. I was always trying to be like the responsible older sibling, like taking care of everybody and trying to be the good kid and trying to, do good for everybody. And I wish I would have started getting into trouble earlier, because that would have been a lot more fun for sure.
Sure. Well, and I mean, I joke around about that with the idea of, again, going back to archetypes, where it's just like, the oldest sibling is the one, like you're saying, has to be responsible, and then the younger ones can, get away with murder or whatever.
Yes, that's what it felt like a lot of the time, for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And especially too, with all of the only consistency that you probably had was obviously each other as you were going to these different schools. So, I can understand you feeling like you had to fill this role of obviously being the, responsible one, making sure that all of the stuff was, intact with your, schooling and whatever else.
It makes sense. Yeah. In retrospect, I see it now, and not to overuse that word, but like I've just been reflecting back a lot lately.
Sure.
Yeah, I can see that like now there was that desire to grab for something and create stability, for sure. And for myself and for them, and that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. And so when, like you talked about before we started recording, you're, self-described shy kid, and, identifying really strongly with like role-playing games and, gaming. Was it was it scratching the itch for you as far as like something you could obsess over, or was it scratching the kind of creative itch, or was it all of that together?
I think with gaming in general, and again, yeah, anyone who's like super shy and has, challenging time, talking to other people, it was just a way to connect, or, in some ways escape, and I did use gaming to escape as much as connect. But yeah, there is a social element tied to it. And I found, Kind of similar to this, we're not really Zooming, we're talking, and we're just talking to each other. Gaming, there is a little bit of a firewall, I guess, and you can still talk to people, but you're not like directly looking at each other.
Sure.
And I think it just always felt like a safe place for me, but I could still connect with others. Yeah. So it felt really, really balanced. And creativity wise, I'm sure I was getting inspired, with some creativity there for sure. But I think a lot of that creativity with gaming didn't come until maybe after I was, had turned 18 and moved out of the house. And I started, my first few years in college, I was a theater major, and one of my friends was like, do you want to do this thing called Vampire the Masquerade? And I was like, what is that? And he's like, well, it's like live action role playing game. And I'm like, what is that? And he's like, well, you play, but it's like you act it out also. And so to anyone else in the world, they would probably hear that and just be like, no. But me, I was like, yeah, that sounds super fun. And that kind of experience, especially being someone who was so brutally shy for so long, kind of helped me get out of my shell and be around other people in real life and be acting and playing a game at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love like the stories of people that are shy or do have difficulties, like you said, connecting with people and step into, the theater, improv, whatever it is, where you feel like you are either removing yourself from your own body and just kind of like watching yourself perform. Like, I just love when that shit, like you said, that shell kind of opens up, because you do feel, you're a part of a team and like you're working with others and all of these life skills that you, of course, are not like articulating it at the time. You're just like, oh, this is fun. I want to do this. And then you're like, oh, wow, I actually learned something from that.
Oh, 100%. And I think back to those years, like with so much love in my heart, because the friends I had at the time, in Monterey in particular, I went to Monterey Peninsula College, a couple of which I'm still in touch with to this day. They really helped. I think that was that first moment, because a lot of people are raised a specific way. My parents were musicians, but at some point they stopped kind of doing that and they had shifted gears. But one thing that was always present was, we were like Catholic, went to school, this is the classic, like raised super religious still kind of thing. And that was about the most social interactions I would have, like going to catechism and all that kind of stuff. So, but that still can feel to some people pretty oppressive, and that's how I felt. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And when I got to be in school and be around kids and start to kind of find my own path, like my first introduction to theater and like black box theater, and I've kind of described this a little bit with the new video Cherish. I think I just like completely fell in love with it and felt like for the first time that I could articulate all the things I was thinking and feeling, using that medium, using that environment, that atmosphere. Whereas a lot of my social interactions prior, I felt very stifled. And so I don't know if what I'm saying is making any sense, but I definitely wanted to kind of go back to those formative moments, those early moments, and get some pull through there with like this record, especially since so much of this record's about finding your own voice and breaking free.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And especially, like you said, only through age can you get that perspective to understand how much that was able to help you along, and then understand how that kind of fits, in your life in general. And it's like the saying, youth is wasted on the young, is so where you're just like, oh yeah, dude, you're right. Like we're all young and stupid and idiotic, but that's obviously part of it in order for us to be able to understand, like, because if you thought about it too much, like, you may not have even ended up doing theater because you would have been like too much in your head and you'd be like, I can't do that. And it's like, no, you can't because you're dumb.
I love that. I love that so much. And that is so much of what I'm talking about on The Gate, like the song. It's literally spending too much time in your head and not spending enough time in like being present or just straight up leaning in to like the things that are going to make you happy, the things that are going to set you free. But you're right. And back then, I think for the first time, I was just sort of letting go and just kind of going with the flow and not overthinking. And I'm finding that, letting go is one of those, that is a space where I feel most alive. And I feel like I'm able to be my most authentic self and also produce probably like, I don't know, I'd say better art, I guess.
Sure.
Term.
Listen, it's time. Pull the trigger. Go to rockabilia.com. Place your holiday orders now. That way it's out of the way and you don't even have to think about it anymore. And on top of it, I'm giving you a promo code, 100 words or less. That is the code that will get you 10% off your entire order. And you can knock out all of your shopping for your mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whoever it is in the family, boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't care what it is. They have it in spades. It's all officially licensed. And say you're being like, you know what? I want to buy a Jimi Hendrix hoodie and then a bullet for my Valentine t-shirt. Yeah, they have all of that. Or maybe you're like, you know what? How about a Bob Marley hoodie and then like a typo negative pair of sweatpants? Yeah, that's what they do. They do a little bit of everything. And I love them for that. They ship it from the Midwest here in the United States of America. Very easy to get to you. And I love the company so much. Friends and family. Like, I feel like if I were to visit their offices, it'd be like, Ray, what's up, everybody? And they'd be like, hey, Rockabilia, love you. Anyways, please go to rockabilia.com. 100 words or less is the promo code. 10% off of your entire order. Knock out all of your holiday shopping in one fell swoop. Let's go. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know those moments in your life where you reach a fork in the road and you're being like, left, right. I don't know. Left is like, palm trees. Right is like forest. They both look like good ideas, but who do I turn to? Do I talk to friends, family? And sometimes you need a third party to be able to help you walk through these monumental decisions in your life. And that is where therapy comes into play. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, and it is a very beneficial thing to me, and I know many of my friends. And that is why I love working with BetterHelp. If you're thinking about giving therapy a try, start here. BetterHelp is amazing because it's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and most importantly, suitable to your schedule. All you do is pop onto their website, fill out a brief questionnaire, and then you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists if the vibe isn't right, and at no additional charge. All of this stuff is incredible. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. So visit betterhelp.com/Ray today to get 10% off your first month. That is a great deal. And I know that I'm saying that because it's an advertisement, but straight up an awesome deal. That's betterhelp.com/Ray and get therapy. It is an amazing thing to get for yourself. So betterhelp.com/Ray for 10% off your first month. One would assume with your parents being into music that, clearly they were playing in bands and obviously introducing you to a lot of music. When was the first time that you started to, bring stuff home that clearly was either, in complete, conflict with what they understood, or it's like, what is Lis getting into? Like, I don't understand this, loud music or whatever. Or were they generally permissive for you to, kind of do whatever from a music perspective?
Oh, I would say completely permissive. This is the one thing that we all kind of collectively had at Center that we shared that no matter how hard things were, no matter how strange moments, we had a lot of crazy things happen in our family, but the one thing we could always come back to Center with and that we shared was, a love for music and a love for a lot of different genres of music. So I never felt ever once, not to this day. I mean, they still play music in Florida to this day. That was the thing that was easy. And, you know, my father had such a vast collection of music that spanned tons and tons of genres. He was genre fluid, as I'd like to. He just everything. But I would say like the majority of it would be country, rock, and then like prog. Those were like his three favorites. But his catalog of music, and we always had a music like area in our house growing up forever. At one point he had so much music, it was a music room. It was everything. I mean, classical, that was another thing. He had tons and tons of classical music because his mother, my grandmother, was a classic pianist. So music was always the thing that we all could center around for sure. In all different
That's
kinds
awesome.
of genres. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially too, where it's like any, you know, parent or, you know, family member that is into music and is into, to your point, a lot of different genres, even when they're confronted with something that they don't understand that their kid is bringing home, whether it's like, you know, here's some SoundCloud rap or here's some, you know, death metal, like they'll be like, I don't necessarily like it or understand it, but you're passionate about it. So like, let's go for it, you know?
Yeah, totally. And, you know, so they were really open and receptive. And I remember like getting kind of really into, like trip hop. And, I think I did share with my dad, like Mezzanine.
Hell yeah. Massive Attack.
Yeah. At one point, and he was like, cool. I mean, that's all he said, but that was still probably better than like, you know, maybe what some people experience when they bring music to their parents and they get like pretty negative feedback. So I've always felt very lucky in that regard. And even to this day, you know, when I go home and I visit mom and pop, like, you know, it's music, music, music. They literally, I'm home for 5 minutes and they start pulling out. Now they play ukuleles. So things have changed. It's not like loud and like rocking, but it's, you know, there's music is always there. It's always present.
Sure. And so when you started to go through, you know, high school, and like you said, you went to college and were doing, you know, theater and all that sort of stuff, was there kind of a life path that you were supposed to head on in regards to, you know, studying, like getting a major, getting a degree, like that was, I imagine, part of the plan, so to speak?
That's what I told my family.
Got it.
I had no plan. I just wanted to experience like life, you know, away outside of the house. And, but yeah, if an aunt would ask me, I'd be like, oh yes, I'm majoring, you know, but no, I was just happy to be anywhere doing anything and no real, idea in my head about what I wanted. I knew I enjoyed theater and I kept kicking myself, especially my freshman year, because I was like, why didn't I do this in high school? Like, why didn't I start this journey earlier? But where I landed was art. At some point I had moved again because I took after my family. I started moving a lot, but I had moved to Oregon and because my parents had moved up there, and I was like, well, let me try this out. This might be fun. I've been in California pretty much my whole life. And I went to school, a university there, and I switched to art and sculpture. I fell in love with 3D and kind of dug my heels in, and that's kind of where I finished and wrapped up was 3D art.
Nice. That's, and I love when, like, especially too, where it's like people involved in DIY, punk, hardcore, and all of that, and like are not doing it like we were joking off mic. The idea that it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to play in a band and like that's like my future in life. Like no one thinks that. They're just like, oh, this is something else that I'm doing, but then are developing another side of themselves, whether it is, you know, academically or, you know, career wise or whatever, because I do think that it just, all of that really contributes to your artistic output musically. I think when you're experiencing all these different sides of your life, as opposed to like, all right, I just want to like go and tour, which is a good thing. But, you know, when you're not putting anything else into it, it kind of, might ring hollow.
Yeah, that's fair. And I feel grateful that I got to figure out ways to experience it. And I want to be completely transparent. It took me forever in school.
Sure.
Some kids go to school and they like figure this shit out in like 4 years. Like that's a standard amount of time, not me. I mean, it was almost twice as long because for a myriad of reasons, from a lack of focus to loving everything. That's always been one of my flaws. I just get distracted and excitable about everything. I just want to experience all of it. To having to work. I had to work the entire time. I didn't really, my parents were musicians, so we had $0, growing up. Sure. So I didn't really have any, and a very small nucleus of a family. So they were pretty much it for me. But, so no support. And I didn't really hit grades tough enough in high school to get like scholarships. So by the time I got to school, I was really having to do double duty. I was working and going to school. And so that also had a contributing factor in why it took me twice as long. And then finally, I was partying quite a bit for a few years. So I, having been, I think, raised very like strict Catholic, had a lot of rules. There was definitely a few years where I kind of just went hog wild and just did whatever I felt like doing. And that definitely slowed things down.
Sure. That's like the, whatever that concept of Raumspringa, or I don't know. I think that's what it's called.
Oh yes, totally. I think about that. I've seen like a documentary about that.
Yeah, same. And it's like when you look at it in that term of just like, okay, go, crazy for 2 years and then you'll come back and like, it'll be out of your system. And it's like, I could see like theoretically that can work, but then sometimes it obviously goes very much the opposite direction. But like, yeah, you people do have to process that and get it out of their systems in some capacity.
Yeah. And so, all those contributing factors, it took me a while to get through school. And I did take a year off and I traveled. I went to Alaska. That was kind of just on a whim. I kind of just did whatever I wanted to do. It's like as years rolled by, I just kind of decided I'm going to make my own reality. I'm not going to finish school in this amount of time. I'm just going to take huge breaks and go explore the wilderness and stuff. So yeah, it was interesting. It was a kind of an interesting time looking back at it.
Sure. And when you're saying, exploring the wilderness and stuff like that, the idea of, just exploring and like adventure, it doesn't really, it is kind of maybe in congress to the shyness nature. I mean, I guess some of it can be reflected on that, just the idea that you're alone in the wilderness or whatever. But it seems like you still had a sense of adventure, even though, that may have been in direct conflict with the idea of being like shy.
Oh, completely. I think if I look like my freshman year and, just starting to like try to find a way to relate to people and talk, just simply talk to people, human beings. It was so challenging for me for so long. And then by like pretty much my junior, senior year, which again, we're talking like 6 years into school. Just up and moving for a year and just saying, I'm going to go live in this state. I'm going to climb mountains and do weird things. Like I don't even have a plan, just go up there. And the only plan I had was I had a friend that was from there that had graduated school a year ahead of me. And she had invited me to come stay with her for a while. And, what was supposed to be a month or two turned into a year. And it was really great. And I got to experience it. And then, finally came back home to finish things up and wrap up my school.
That's cool. So when you started to get into, DIY, punk, hardcore, and the idea, like you said, you were obviously graduating before you were like starting a band and stuff like that. When did that kind of come into your life? Was it in the sort of high school era, or was it, when you were at college?
Yeah, it was after college. I had I was at the very end of school. At this point, I had actually transferred to Portland State University. I was living in Portland. I was working at Darcel 15 and Company, which is a full-time drag theater. And I between work, I was kind of like wrapping things up with school, but it wasn't full time. And I was working a lot. And I just remember thinking like, God, how much I wanted to, every night I was seeing the girls perform, and I just was falling in love with this idea of performing again. Cause again, started with theater, and then I kind of changed into, art. But then my roots are music. And I was kind of just sitting there in my head going, and I started getting really depressed because I was just working and kind of wrapping school, but I didn't have any direction. I didn't know what I was going to do next. But every night I was getting inspired by these girls. I was just like killing it on stage. And, and these queens are just beautiful. And what they were bringing to each performance and how much love and care they put into it. I just felt compelled to want to get back into performance art somehow. And I was like, what do I want to do? And so I started writing terrible music in a DAW by myself. I didn't know what I was doing at all. I think I took like what little money I had in savings and got myself like a Mac Mini or something. I don't know, just something that had barely any power to it. And I worked in GarageBand. Like I just started anywhere. And I just started making music. And then by the time I had wrapped school and everything, I just made a decision to move to Seattle. I don't know.
Okay.
I said, I'm going to move to Seattle and I'm going to get a job anywhere, and try to just find people to do music with. And I had all these terrible demos. I keep saying terrible just because it was so rough.
Oh, sure. You were just you were just starting, but it's in retrospect you could be like, all right, this was awful.
Yeah, this is totally terrible. But yeah, so I just like threw what I could in my car. The only thing, the possessions I cared about, I just threw them in my vehicle. I sold my piano. I had a piano, and to this day, I have never had one since. And it's been like, it's just something I want. I inherited it for free. So I didn't like buy a piano. They're so expensive. But I threw everything in my car. And I just drove up to Seattle from Portland. And I had a buddy that was up there that said, if you ever want to come up, you can come and stay with me. I have an extra room. If you can help me watch my cat, I travel a lot. And so I still paid rent, but, and I found a job. I worked at Guitar Center. So,
ooh.
And yeah, right. That's such a perfect response to that.
Dude, that's a whole, I mean, Guitar Center is such a absolute nightmare for it's a rite of passage for a lot of people.
It really is. It is. It really is. But it depends on when you started working there. Cause there was a period of time where you could work there and, you could make deals with, for people, because that was just part of it. You could help them out, and maybe you're not making as much, but you're helping your friends, and you could kind of move the price a little bit. And
sure,
you had that agency, but at some point things changed. And, they went to more of a Best Buy model or something, and you couldn't do anything. And it became even more corporate. And like, it was really sad. And so part of the reason why people did work there is that they would be cool with you touring. Everyone who worked there were musicians, and you guys would cover each other when somebody else would leave. And then they got rid of that depending on what store you're at too. And I was like, what's the point? And that's when I became shifted over to industry and started doing bartending. And that's a job that a lot of musicians probably can relate to, because all sorts of
it's transient, right? Exactly. Like the transient nature of being like, oh yes, like I'm able to pick up shifts when I'm home and then make enough money to hit rent, and like it's fine because I'll be gone for 3 months and thank you. Yeah. That's what I'm doing.
And also, like, when you're done working, you're done. Like, there's nothing following. There's no trace, signals. You just unless you like screw something up and you get, your boss is like, why didn't you put this keg or whatever. But when you're done, you're done. It's a great job for being a musician. And that's what I turned to.
For sure.
And to answer your question better, because I just realized I missed the whole part of getting involved in DIY. About the time that I moved here, only within a couple of years, I got introduced to some friends that were running a space called the Black Lodge, which just recently reopened. We just had a celebration of opening this past weekend. But back then, years ago, I had been introduced, and at some point they were like, well, we're looking for other people to be caretakers of the space. Would you like to participate in that? And you had to go through like a process. Like everybody had to make sure that, you were cool and you cared and you were leaning in and doing the work. And that's kind of the introduction to that space and DIY booking and the whole thing.
I love merchandise. I love vinyl. And all of these things you can find at the beautiful people at evilgreed.net. They are a web store solution provider for record labels and bands, but you as the consumer benefit greatly by ordering all of these things from one place. And on top of it, they are giving me a promo code that you can use for 10% off of your entire order. 100 words. That is the promo code. It gets you 10% off. Let me just give you a little sampling of some of the bands that they work with. How about Speed, Blood Incantation, Brutus, Chelsea Wolfe, Full of Hell. And they also have some really, really cool affiliations and partnerships with labels like Triple B and Profound Lore. Man, I love this place so much. They ship out of Berlin, Germany, worldwide. And us in the United States, we benefit greatly because the shipping rates are very advantageous for us right now. So I urge you to go to evilgreed.net and use the promo code 100 words for 10% off your entire order. And man, if you just order like 2 items, you're going to make me essentially buy you shipping. That's what I'm doing for you. So evilgreed.net, 100 words is the promo code, and go enjoy shopping for cool stuff.
This is Holly Fry from Stuff You Missed in History class. We all agree that reducing carbon emissions is a good thing, and once again, Toyota is leading the way. We hear a lot about fully electric vehicles, and Toyota has them, and more on the way, but we also know a BEV is not for everyone, whether it's because of cost, range, or concerns about finding a charging station when you need it. Plus, the raw materials used to manufacture batteries are limited. Enter Beyond Zero, Toyota's vision for a carbon-neutral future, in vehicles and in manufacturing plants, too, in the years ahead. The materials used to make just one long-range battery for an EV could be used to make batteries for 6 plug-in hybrids or 90 gas-electric hybrids. That's why Toyota's position today is electrified, diversified, empowering you to choose how to reduce your own carbon footprint with the vehicle that's right for you. A hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or battery EV. So shop, learn more, and get details at toyota.com/beyondzero. Toyota, let's go places.
When you started to get more exposed to that, what attracted you to it initially? Was it obviously just like the simple fact of like the energy and the music, or was there other things that attracted you?
I think it was just everything, because it felt like instant family. And coming from a very small family where it's just, mostly my mom and my dad and my siblings, I've always wanted a big family. It's just the biggest family ever. And I think that is probably, of everything in the world, like what I love most about music and our musical community. And every time even if when you just meet a band for the first time, like maybe you're playing shows together as part of a package or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like you become family almost instantly. And I know that there's tons of musicians out there that are like, yeah, duh. Like that's just what happens. And sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times it does. And these people become friends and family for life. And I was attracted to that probably first and foremost, was the family vibe, the community vibe, and people taking care of each other. And then like music, I guess community first and music second. And then I loved all the exposure to all the different bands, and getting to also be, because we're caretakers of the space, you get almost nightly, your bands are coming through, and they're coming through from all over the world. And that to me is just so precious to be able to, I'm so humbled by it, to be able to have that exposure and have it kind of come to you. And it gets you really excited and geared up and thinking about doing that on your own. Like, well, maybe now I'll put something together and go out there on the road and see what that feels like. So, yeah.
Right. Well, and it seems too that, the band and what you guys are putting forward in general is definitely community focused, very inspired by obviously political messaging, who you are as individuals. And like, hearing you describe like what drew you in is a very much a reflection of what the band is putting out artistically. Like, it's just kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah. I track that much easier now.
Yeah, totally. Well, I just, and I think that it was interesting because, we were part of the space for years and years and years and years. And then when lockdown happened, it was like, even though we still had the space, it was like someone just cut your heart out. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, and I know that was the way it was for everyone in their own way with what they were going through and experiencing, not being able to be close to family, not being, so it's not just this, and it's not a unique experience, but wow, like, boy, did, if there was even a moment in my life that I was taking something for granted in the year leading up to lockdown, because sometimes, you get saturated, you're so saturated in music, whether you're touring or whether you're hosting, it almost started to feel like, like I was an automaton, like I was going through this process and this is just what we do. But when it was taken away, it was the one, I guess I'm trying to say the silver lining of that is that I realized just how important these spaces are to people, to me, of course, but to just everybody, because there was a collective seeming to coming together afterwards going, we cannot let this happen again. Like, we have to do whatever it takes to make sure that these, not that we could have helped that, but boy, did we miss this and how important it is. And we all knew that already, but we really know it now, kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
So
yeah.
It was beautiful in that way. That was the one silver lining. And coming back and having seen Black Lodge reopen, I had tears in my eyes. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big softie, but I was crying like that night. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks to see this coming back to life. And then also getting to volunteer at Vera Project, and Vera, who has taken Black Lodge under their wing to kind of revamp it and put life back into it, is such a beautiful thing. And I'm just so proud of everyone on their team for leaning in and making that happen.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. The another interesting thing I think about your band is, you throw obviously all the genres into the blender, so to speak. Clearly you're rooted in punk and hardcore, but then there's, all the other influences that kind of bleed through, which in turn makes you always kind of the odd band out. You're not so specifically like, oh yeah, you're the, mosh metal band or whatever. And
yeah,
I presume that is fun for you and obviously challenging in certain respects when you're playing with other bands. Do you guys just kind of like revel in that of like, oh yeah, like obviously this is what we're comfortable in creating. So try to classify us.
I really genuinely think that I feel like if we were like, I don't know want to say smart, we would just choose one and go with it. But yeah, I would say that we just kept producing whatever was happening naturally. Like, and really Brian, the guitar player, he writes these songs, like bedroom style, like in his bedroom, and he just writes them all. And then he brings them to the room, and he just, at the end of the day, like just sort of writes what is just naturally coming out. And then in turn, like the record originally had 20 songs, and we kind of really we trim them down. So like every time we think about a release, there's always a lot of songs, and then we just try to pick the ones that we think make sense. But I would say, as much as maybe there's conscious thought that goes into the creation of the material or the batch material, I feel like it also just happens. And so it is a mix of genres because, that's what he and the rest of us are inspired by, is a mix of genres. So I guess it's just absolutely true to what, the kind of music we want to be writing, whether or not it's smart, that thought doesn't go inside of our head.
Sure. Yeah. And to your point too, it's like when you are coming at it from the perspective of no genre is left, untouched, where it's like, yes, we're coming at it from this point of view, but like we have no problem incorporating all of the weird eccentricities that we want to, because ultimately we want to paint with a, broader canvas than, and not disparaging bands that obviously stick to the lane, so to speak, but that's not what you are creatively pushed to do.
Yeah. I think that, there's so many people out there. I have to remind myself of this all the time, billions of people on this planet. Right. And so there's something for everybody, and I love, like, some of my favorite hardcore bands are the ones that are like mostly like mincemeat, like the ones that are, just bringing it super, like, straight as an arrow sometimes, just, or, something super ignorant. Like I just, there's something for everybody. And I kind of feel like, and I love all those bands. And for me personally, I just love being a part of something that is multi-genre, or, is genre fluid, or whatever, however you want to describe it. Because that's just true to the stuff. I love all of those genres. And if there's a way to create something that is a patchwork of genres, but still feels like semi-cohesive, then that is probably the truest reflection of the kind of music that myself and especially Brian want to be making.
Sure. Absolutely. When you started to, get out there and tour in the, I know, like you said, in sort of fits and starts with the music that you've been creating, what was surprising to you about touring, or was it exactly as you kind of anticipated?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Oh, that's good. I think I'm just trying to think of like a tour. Like we did a tour with Savage, and they're really good homie friends of ours, kind of a mixture of hardcore, power violence, etc. They called us up and said, "Yeah, you want to go on this tour with us?" And we were just like, "Yes." Like, there's no hesitation. Because I love the idea of just touring with a band, sharing a van. And we've done it before, like plenty of times, but it's just my favorite, versus just going out by yourself kind of thing. And the part of that was, this was maybe the first real tour we had done since like lockdown. And also it was, we organized every piece of it, and we all kind of, everybody, it was all hands on deck, for booking. And it was just, I thought for some reason that maybe, I'd get out there and it would be slower going, but the shows were just going off and kids were just pumped. And so I guess if there was anything that just surprised me, was just how hard kids came out and how excited they were just to be a part of it. And it just felt really great. I don't even know if I have a real smart way of articulating this. It just felt so powerful to be a part of that, and to just be back out and having so much fun and playing the new material. I was a little bit nervous just because we play with so many grind bands.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So you play with like a lot of grind, but they're so heavy, and it's so like, I love grind. But I was wondering, like, how's the gate going to go over with like kids that are coming to see grind, specifically, and they don't care. They seem to really enjoy, like, it doesn't matter what song we were throwing at them. So yes, that's the answer to your question. I was stoked to see how well they embraced songs, especially ones that were super melodic. versus like the harsher noise ones, etc.
Sure. And I'm sure too, to that point, you offering a, different take or sounding different than the other bands you're playing is, a welcome reprieve where it's like, oh, okay, it's not, not disparaging, 7 power violence bands playing in a row. Cause I've definitely been to, that show 500 times, but it's nice when you're just like, oh, wow, there's a little something different here. Like there's just that additional layer. And so you stood out by default.
Yeah. And some people really love going to shows and seeing, most of the bands kind of bring in something similar. And then there's people who love mixed bills. But I feel like a lot of, if you want to specifically even talk about hardcore right now, I love the diversity of sound that will be part of a package. So like you'll have, like you said, scowl on one side and you'll have military gun and you'll have, Zulu, or you'll have gel. Like everybody has their own flavor and they're all kind of doing their thing. And, in some cases they're mixing things too, like mixing up a couple genres here and there, but they can all be on the same bill. And every time you see a crowd respond, they're all just going nuts for it. So I just love what's happening right now. And I'm just feeling grateful to be a part of it.
Absolutely. I mean, hardcore is arguably the largest it ever has been in the history of this genre of music, which is funny to say because you're like, well, really? It's like, well, yeah, because like there's at this point, you can't really point to a quote unquote ceiling because now it's like, oh yeah, like people are used to aggressive music now. Like it's not as, it's still jarring for a majority of the population, but like there's a lot of people that go along with it now. And it's like, oh yeah, I can listen to screaming. It's not this foreign idea anymore.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've heard so many sides to this. It's not even an argument, but it's definitely a topic that gets touched on from different perspectives. And, one perspective is it's the biggest it's ever been. And then, sometimes you'll be like reading like a forum and somebody's like, oh, it comes in waves. This is just one of many. And it's been really, regardless of what angle you come from, I love that we're talking about it. I love that it's as big as it is right now. I love that there is an entry point for people and that they're just getting into it, period. Whether they're coming through Turnstile or whether they're coming through, like through power violence, it doesn't matter. It's just beautiful to see all these people of all ages getting excited about hardcore and the scene and the community. It's just beautiful. I don't know. I'm always going to try to lean like on the positive side of everything just because, like the big joke I always make is existence is futile. So like, sure. I just want to always like community is everything, and a hardcore community, grind community. These communities are all about like, at the end of the day, just trying to bring people together to enjoy something, to find some joy in this godforsaken fucking place we call Earth.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to hit on was the idea, like, because like you said, you're getting out more. Clearly signing to a record label like Monarch, there are music industry things that you are having to consider and, quote unquote, business decisions, capital B or what have you. Yeah. And so what's clearly you're comfortable with existing in it because, otherwise you would not have signed to a record label or, all of these things that, some bands would obviously just not feel comfortable about, not saying that signing to a record label is an evil deed because clearly it's not, but just that idea of interacting with the business side of things. Are you, do you enjoy that aspect? Are you comfortable with it? What's your relationship with it?
Yeah. The only reason why I think we chose to work with Monarch is because when you talk to, like, if you were to talk to them, it's like you're talking to, somebody that is in a DIY space. Like they are so cool and so chill and but they're helpful and they're like the kind of people that like roll up their sleeves. They're like not afraid to get in the trenches, I guess I don't know. It just feels familiar to me. It feels like, that's one consideration. The other consideration, someone said, if you're ever going to ask for help, ask for it because they're able to help you with something maybe you can't do yourself, like why, or just DIY the hell out of it, and that's been kind of the ethos forever. And I just feel like I was hitting a little bit of a ceiling or a wall. I don't know how to exactly put it, but trying to juggle a bunch of things. And I was finding that I was having a little bit of a difficulty. And someone mentioned that they were so easy and cool to work with. They were like, why don't you just talk to them? And if you're not into it, if you're not feeling it, vibing it, then no issue, no love lost. They're like, but I feel like you're gonna, like, if you give them just one conversation. And everything they talked about, first of all, A, it felt super comfortable. And then B, to my point that I'm trying to make is they were like, and we can help you with this, this, and this. And I'm like, those are the things that I'm like really could use help with. So that would probably just be like, every band is they're going to make their decisions about what they do and why they do it. And I'm just grateful that someone gave me that advice at some point. They just said, do not rush to do anything unless they're able to help you with something you couldn't do yourself. And, and so, yeah, I feel really, really excited about the team, and I feel excited about the support that I get constantly. And that's what makes me probably feel really comfortable with it.
Sure. Well, and just it is one of those things, like when you trust people, whether it's a booking agent, management, record label, like any of these things, like at the end of the day, we all are humans, and you don't have to feel crushed by this, like, oh, because I'm entering the music industry, I'll be just like, ground up and spit out and playing cover songs or whatever. It's like, no, like that doesn't need to happen. It's like, as long as there's that trusting relationship at the core of it. And if you, like you said, if you had a conversation with, a mutual friend, Mr. Bill over at Monarch, like
everyone
if you talk to
Bill.
Of course, yeah, it's a great dude, known him for years. And so it's like, yeah, if you had a conversation with him and you were just like, oh yeah, this doesn't feel right, like it's like, yeah, you don't need to do this. And I think that open-mindedness you're talking about is very important, I think, for most bands of all genres of independent music, to just like, hey, do what you're comfortable with, but don't be closed off to this thing.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Bill, and really to springboard off that and then to bookend is like, he is such an incredible soul. Like, we talk about the human side of anything, right? And he was my entry point into Monarch. He is just incredible, and he cares about things. He has his ethos. You can tell what he stands for. The first conversation he had with me was rock the vote, or, getting out and making sure that we're getting, keeping kids involved, and making sure people stay active, and they don't just lean back and get lethargic about it. And then their support of, we obviously lean in really heavily to making sure that there is funding for trans, and we're backing trans rights and doing everything we can to get exposure for that as much as we can. And they embrace that fully. And you can always tell also what people stand for, because I'm a firm believer in equity instead of just optics. When they're actually like signing bands that are trans and signing bands that, that's when I start to feel like, okay, this is real. This isn't just, talking points for these people. So I guess that mattered. And that was one last bullet point I should probably point out that was really important. They care and they support. And, they're just helping you kind of amplify your own messaging about what you care about. And I think that that's really cool. And they never once meddle in how you create. And if anything, they want you to that's what they like about you, is that maybe you're a little different. So anyway, right. I'm really a firm lover and believer in Monarch right now.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that idea, like you said, the lip service that can be paid to certain things, whether it's, corporate messaging or whether it's whatever aspect of life that we're existing in, it's like when you do see, like you said, the, rubber hitting the road, the action where you're like, oh yes, like this particular entity, even though there's, a lot of people involved, like they are not stifling what it is that we want to put forth, either creatively or politically, that like this is an important backbone to what the band is. And like that, yeah, then that is it's not even a trade-off, but that is the the ethos that you are free to describe. And like, no one's going to say, I don't know about that, Lis. Maybe we shouldn't do that because it's not commercially viable. It's like, nah, this is what we're doing.
That's right. So yeah, I feel really good about it. And I just can't wait. I wish I could share what's happening next year, but definitely we'll never have an issue with someone saying, oh, we haven't seen you out here. So we're going to be cooking and we're going to be moving. And I can't wait to just see everybody in person.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, Lis, thank you very much for hanging out with me and forging through the technical difficulties that we did. So I appreciate it.
Oh, we got through it, and we got through it together.
It's true. We're all in this wild world together, having Zoom-like conversations about existential issues.
That's right. That's the name of my next. That's the actual name of my next band. Yes.
There we go. That was Lis, and thank you very much for coming on the show. Always appreciate that. And like I said, Filth Is Eternal just put out a new record, and go check that out on all the streaming services, and they undoubtedly will be coming to your town at some point in the near future. Next week, this is a little bit of a deeper cut, but I was very excited to have this conversation. His name is Jeff Howe. He plays in a band called Horsewhip, also played in a band called Reversal of Man. That was quite huge for me in the mid to late 90s Screamos section, and also Combat Wounded Veteran, which is, man, such a good band. And Horsewhip is his new band, and they just put out a record, and I love it. It's so flippin' good. So had to have Jeff on the pod. So that's what we did, and that's what's happening next week for all of you. Until then, please be safe, everybody.
Congratulations to the Walt Disney Studios technology team, first place award winner for innovation in employee enablement at the 2023 Unconventional Awards presented by T-Mobile for Business. Disney's Studio Lab and production technology teams are constantly searching for innovative ways to help studio creatives solve production challenges through dynamic collaboration. By discovering and leveraging T-Mobile's 5G solutions, the Walt Disney Studios technology teams streamline production and collaboration in real time, avoiding costly delays and enabling creativity. T-Mobile for Business congratulates the teams for their innovation and unconventional thinking.
This is Jana Kramer from Wind Down with Jana Kramer. Imagine a simple and powerful act at the time of your baby's birth that could prepare them for their potential future health needs. Cord blood banking is such an amazing thing, and it's a one-time opportunity. For something so important, ViaCord is the only choice. Using innovative technology, ViaCord extracts and preserves stem cells, providing families the opportunity of a potential safeguard against nearly 80 serious medical conditions. With 25 years of experience, ViaCord stands out as a leader in cord blood banking. Because your child's future is too important to leave to chance, choose ViaCord. And the time for you to act is now. From now through December 1st, you can take advantage of ViaCord's best price of the year with $500 cord blood processing and $995 cord blood and tissue processing. You can register today and lock in this special price with nothing due until after the birth of your baby. Visit ViaCord's website at Viacord, VIACORD.com to sign up now or learn more.
This is Holly Fry from Stuff You Missed in History Class. Toyota is a leader when it comes to electrified vehicles. Today, battery EVs make up less than 10% of new vehicles sold because of higher cost and concerns about range and charging. Enter Beyond Zero, Toyota's vision for a carbon-neutral future. With an electrified, diversified lineup of hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and battery EVs, Toyota empowers you to choose how to reduce your own carbon footprint. Learn more and get details at toyota.com/beyondzero. Toyota, let's go places.